Amanda, thank you.
Yes,
That's right.
put it with his.
All right, Morena, welcome back, councillors, and apologies for hurting you in the room next door. We are now in our second set of key issues briefings for this morning, led out of Anita's team, and actually a mix of my team as well. So we've got strategy, and Tom's team, we've got science as well. So I'm going to hand over to the top table, who will start us off with a briefing on air quality.
Tēnā koutou, ko Otipoti te tūraka waiwai, I tipu ake au ki Otipoti raro I te maru o te mauka o Kāpuka Taumahaka, I te taha o te awa o Kaikarai ke te noho au ki Otipoti. Ko Pakeha te iwi, ko Adams rātou, ko Morrison, ko Emerson, ko Milton ka whānau, ko au tēnei, ko James Adams toku I kua. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm James. Thank you so much for having us today for this briefing. I'm here with, I'm from the strategy team, ably led by Hilary Lennox, and we're here with our principal scientist as well, Jason Alsberger. Now, as it says on the tin, we're here to talk about air quality. Every winter, is this going to click? This is rather less dramatic than I hoped. Oh, well, this has taken all the... There we go. Got there. Now, every winter, particulate matter in the air is worsening the health and well-being of Otago communities in some of our most well-recognised places. National and international data shows that particulate matter can make vulnerable people sick and lead to premature deaths. Now, what we have up here at the moment from Stats NZ is basically a league table of the dirtiest air in New Zealand. We have 4 air quality monitors in Otago that are used to make national comparisons, and 3 of those 4 show breaches of the national standards and are actually in the top 10 worst polluted airsheds in New Zealand, with Arrowtown at second worst. It's likely that the problem is more widely spread than this national monitoring shows.
Good investment.
There are places with a lot of geographical and climate similarities to the places on that list. So places like Milton, Clyde and Cromwell could be well up this list as well, so could Wanaka. And the monitoring that we do have from those places corroborates that. The main cause of the problem is home wood burners. That's a common issue in New Zealand, and the good news is the places around the country have beaten this issue. In fact, there's basically a playbook for doing it. It'll require time, education, rules and resourcing for Otago people to make those changes, but the upshot is that we have an issue, the issue is fixable, and the sooner we act, the more people will benefit from better air quality. So that's the executive summary, basically. Air quality is a gift that keeps on giving in terms of the information and considerations that are part of it. And there's been a lot going on behind the scenes at ORC. And for the rest of this session, we're going to cover broadly what ORC has been up to and why. ORC's responsibilities for air quality are set out in the Resource Management Act, as you might expect, and the National Environmental Standards for Air Quality that we affectionately call the NESAC. We have a regulatory role that's set out in the Act, making and enforcing rules, and we can also do things that support those rules, take non-regulatory actions. And keep in mind as we go through this, that especially for the non-regulatory matters, ORC is one of many agencies and organisations with direct or indirect interests in air quality, and we'll need to work with that community of interest to really get on top of the air quality issues that we have. So the Air Plan is our key regulatory tool that sets out the rules. And you can see there that the focus in that Air Plan is on human health, amenity, nuisance and odour, not climate. And it covers most emissions, including industrial and waste emissions, things like agricultural spraying, rural burning. It doesn't cover vehicle emissions. And from 2009 to 2018, we actually provided funding for wood burner replacements, and that program was quite successful. However, as you'll see there, the Air Plan became operative in 2003, and a lot has changed in practice, monitoring and supporting research in the intervening years. And what we do know, even though we monitor all those emissions, is that particulate matter, or PM, is the biggest issue for air quality in Otago. So what particulate matter is and why it's a problem, basically it's small stuff in the air, and it's at the size, at the smallest sizes we can breathe it in, they can go deep into our lungs. Then NESAC asks us to measure PM10, so that's particles less than 10 micrometers across, about a fifth as wide as one of the hairs on your head. We know from more recent research that it's even smaller particles that are the worst for health. That's PM 2.5, so that's a quarter of that size again. Research from New Zealand and around the world confirms the risk from these particles to respiratory and cardiovascular health, and especially for people who are already vulnerable, so people who are already sick or who are old or very young, and the costs are real. The effects translate into billions of health dollars per year and more than 3,000 premature deaths per year. I'll now pass this over.
Excellent. For those of you who have been involved in the space for a while, you'll probably be expecting to see Sarah Harrison, our air quality scientist, here today. She would love to be here, however, she's overseas. So you've got me in lieu of Sarah. Thank you. So our focus with air monitoring has generally been on PM10 due to those health effects, and also more recently on PM 2.5, so that information's become more available. We've got a relatively lean monitoring network in Otago, monitoring 4 sites, being Arrowtown, Dunedin, Alexandra, and Mossgiel. We do run a winter survey or sentinel program, if you like, where we go around and take measurements at some of the sort of long-term continuous monitoring locations, such as Cromwell, Clyde. So that's where we do have that corroborating data showing that they could also have air quality issues. The main source of PM10 is generally wood burners in New Zealand. We do see some naturally occurring particulate matter from dust, pollen, sea salt as well. How do we know it's mainly from wood burners? Well, there's kind of a few different lines of evidence. So I'll start you on the right graph here, which has got PM10 or particulate matter on the y-axis, and then month on your x-axis, starting with January going through to December. What you see is 3 of those lines, which correspond to central Otago sites in Mossgiel, go up in winter, and Dunedin kind of goes straight across, being central Dunedin. That corroborates with when you probably start to burn wood as things start to get colder down in Otago. If you move to that left graph, you'll see PM10 on the y-axis and the hour of the day on the x-axis. And what you see is there's a peak in the morning, which is signified by that left-hand box, and then a peak at night as people come home and light wood burners, as signified by the right-hand box there.
So we are a bit limited in the things that we can do. Otago's ORC's responsibilities begin with the discharge. So our responsibility starts at the top of the chimney there. District and city councils are responsible for building consents for the burners themselves. So we're not responsible directly for the things that make discharges. So we can't force people to remove burners, just stop discharging from them. We have rules in our existing air plan about what discharges can occur where, and we can be more stringent about this in the future. As part of this process, though, we need to recognise that the places where air quality is a problem up through central Otago do get very cold, and that being able to heat homes is really vital for health as well. So we're dealing with how to balance those issues together. I'll pass this over to Hilary to talk about what we've been doing in that space.
Just wondering if you wanted to take a pause for any questions on any of the science or before we talk about what we're doing.
You're going to one slide before that. Possible.
Oh, no, Jason's slide. One more slide.
That's my fault.
We'll go one more, then we'll pause for questions. So what you've got up here is, how's it going? What are the trends in air quality? Arrowtown, top left, Alexandra, bottom left, Dunedin, top right, Mossgiel, bottom right. You've got time on your X, and then you've got sort of a slightly modified version of PM that controls for seasonality so that you can try and extract the true trend of air quality as it goes across. Your blue line here is your median concentration, and then the green line here is your 95th. So that's the one that you'd probably care about in terms of exceedances. It's not directly comparable to NESAC because you have to remove seasonality to look at trends. What does it show? Generally a positive picture in that air quality is getting better. So that's a good thing. However, it's getting better rather slowly. So it wouldn't be enough to make NESAC by 2040. And Alexandra wouldn't meet NESAC under the current conditions. Take some questions if you got them.
In terms of people's health, is there some documentation out there or research that tells us that people are getting sick from the air quality, or conditions they've got are being exacerbated by the air quality? Because I think there's two differences in that, because the story I just told Hillary is that from my experience, the people that are unwell and are going to be susceptible to the air outside will not go outside when the air is not going to be good. So, you know, are people actually starting with, say, I'm healthy like I am, just healthy, and all of a sudden I'm going to be impacted by living in Arrowtown next to Matt, and I'm going to get sick? Or is it actually someone who's already, shall I say, health compromised that's more at risk?
There's, yeah. I'll sort of respond with what I know with the caveat that I'm sort of not a health expert, but so the answer is sort of yes to all of those. Particulate matter in the air, if you're breathing it in, it's not great for your lungs, and over time it can, if you're in a very smoky place, it can build up and make you sick. And we're talking sort of in the same way, well, not quite in the same way, it's not quite an equivalent, but putting smoke in your lungs through smoking, that's sort of doing some of the same stuff. So the studies that we have basically say, look, actually any amount of PM in the air is probably not going to be good for your lungs, and more is worse. So as Jason said, there's some that's naturally occurring, and I guess we just have to live with that. But the more we can reduce it, the better. It is particularly bad for vulnerable people. That's true. It does have those effects on people. We do have some studies. In fact, there's one from Alexandra that showed increased respiratory admissions during the winter, and with some corrections that attributed that to PM as well. No.
I was just going to add that we do work closely with the Te Whatu Ora in this space, and they're always open to coming along and speaking to you, particularly about the health aspects of this, and Sarah in particular, and I works closely with them, so that opportunity is available, and that would be what we would do rather than, you know, flailing too much into outside of our spaces. We're bringing them into.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get anybody to go into the space because it is complex.
Yeah.
I guess that's the key thing to me, is this is complex. You can't say it's this, that, or that. It's probably a combination, and it's trying to find a sensible way of reducing that risk, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of research in this space around the world. Air quality is obviously not an issue unique to Otago, and so we benefit from that research, and that is generally health-led. The previous council had Dr. Alexander McMillan presented a couple of times on air quality, transport, things like that, and those opportunities also pop up. So there's certainly people locally out of the university that we can bring in to speak more authoritatively about these things.
And Matt, Hillary?
Yeah, I'm in Arrowtown, so I'm really interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
But also it's that whole engagement thing and what's been effective. And obviously coordinating with health was one of the questions I had. Does Enviro schools stretch to this kind of stuff? I know that it's, you know, critters and birds and that sort of stuff, but you know, how do the wind friends and influence people? Sometimes when little kiddies come home and tell their parents what they've done wrong, is another way to tell their brains and change any gear.
Yeah, so name's just duffed out, but EnviroSchools is very broad, so I would suspect they do get into the space, but we have to get Lisa just to come in at some point and can run a bit of a
I mean, I'm happy to act as a liaison with the.
There's been a number of projects under the Ministry of Education to get rid of old boilers and replace them with clean burning, so it is something they're very conscious of.
Yeah, but also if the kids that go home to light the fire, you know, after school, know what they're meant to be doing and how to press the button on the heat pump instead of fire or something. So, anyway, just curious about those sort of engagement tools, and happy to help out.
Yeah, I'll just add that I can't speak to what Enviro schools have been doing specifically, but there has been a research project in Clyde just this winter gone with the Clyde school there. So the kids undertook a air quality project in their classrooms to understand how to keep their classrooms and how to clear the air in their classrooms without opening the windows and letting all the air in.
Yeah, right.
And they may be coming to speak to you.
Yeah, so they're coming at the end of November to the Cromwell meeting, just to give you all a summary of their project.
Okay, awesome.
And that's maybe one further thing to add is another thing that we do know is that actually indoor, although our responsibility doesn't extend to indoor air quality, generally speaking, it's unless you've got a really, really well sealed ultra-modern house, indoor air quality and outdoor air quality are basically the same.
Yeah.
And especially when you've got a wood burner that's drawing air, that tends to draw air in from the outside. When the outside air is smoky, it's drawing that smoky air into the house.
You should have lived in a house full of smokers.
Hello, do you have a question?
Do we try and overlay the two things I think you said at the beginning, which was that on one hand, no amount of particulates is good for anybody, and on the other hand, you didn't put this, but that having a warm, healthy home is important too.
Mhm.
So do we ever attempt to overlay those two health things? Because we know with healthy homes and things, people say, like landlords are supposed to have the ability to keep a house warm to over 18 degrees in the living room or whatever it is. Do we try and marry those two things? Because it's all very well at the one hand looking at one lot, but if there isn't any choice, and like a landlord in the healthy homes sense can provide a mechanism for heating that house to 18 degrees and whatever it is, but that doesn't mean people can afford to turn the heating on. So do we do anything in that interactive sense?
And yes, we'll speak to the approach that we were proposing in the draft strategy, and it was going to tackle this kind of complex challenge from a number of different angles, but it was definitely appreciating that what we did not want to happen was for people living in rental properties to end up in a situation where they felt like they couldn't turn their fire on, if that was the only source of heating in their home. And so that was something we were very mindful of when we were figuring out what could be a reasonable approach to take to try and improve air quality in these towns. But we'll get more into that in the next few slides.
And also, I presume you're well into rental homes being different, the rules for them, and so they should be, are different than what you choose to do in the privacy of your own home, as it were. But that we care about our whole community. We don't care just about whether you've rented a house or whether you haven't rented a house. So trying to find results and things to do, and with the cost, you might have, as it were, a solo mum with 17 children who's got no money, not turning the heating on. That solo mum may be able to get the Lions Club to deliver a lot of wood for her over the winter.
You're absolutely right. And I think Hillary's probably going to cover this a bit more deeply as we go on. So I don't want to cover it too much, except to say that, like we were saying before, this is a really complex area, and it definitely touches on areas of housing performance, of which air quality is one part. And we're very aware of that and have been trying to engage more broadly with the groups that are doing that sort of work as well, so we can figure out how that we fit into the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
I can share all this stuff as well. Is that right?
Yeah, it's all public. Yep.
Okay, so what have we been up to? So as we've talked about, there's several Otago towns. We've got a top 6 there: Arrowtown, Cromwell, Clyde, Alexandra, Milton and Mosgiel, that still don't or are unlikely to meet the national air quality standards for human health. And they probably won't get there for a long time under the current settings. So, you know, as Jason said, we are seeing some signs of improvement in some of these towns, but it's very slow and it's not on the right trajectory to meet those air quality standards anytime soon, unfortunately. So the Regional Council has in the past developed air quality strategies to try and take more of a holistic approach to how we manage air quality. So the first one was in 2007. And there was another one in 2018, and they've both had some success. James spoke about how previously we funded ORC funded wood burner replacements, and that was following the 2007 strategy, and that saw 1,250 older wood burners replaced across the region, and there was some marked improvement in air quality in some towns following that. And so in 2023, we began a holistic review of ORC's approach to air, and there was a real focus on discharges from domestic heating, given that that is one of the biggest challenges for the region. And one of the reasons why we prompted that review of our approach is because the domestic the air plan, as James said, has been around since 2003. A lot has changed since then. It's quite old. The RMA requires that our plans are updated every 10 years. So it's well overdue an update. And the domestic heating rules in particular could do with a refresh. So we went through a long process that we haven't mapped for you today, but we did come up with a draft strategy. And admittedly, the thrust of the strategy really was on domestic heating in some of our more polluted airsheds. So, but there were other focus areas in the strategy as well. So focus areas 1 and 2 were really around domestic heating. You'll see references there to Air Zone 1, Air Zone 2. We haven't explained what those are yet today, but basically it's our urban areas. Air Zone 1 being our more polluted urban areas, and Air Zone 2 covers a lot of the other urban areas. We had focus areas 3 and 4 that looked at outdoor burning with slightly different approaches for urban outdoor burning and then rural outdoor burning as well. Focus area 5 was some of the discharges that tend to, in our air plan, they either have a permitted activity associated with them or you need consent for them. So, agricultural and fertilizer discharges, industrial trade, some other farming discharges and waste. For focus area 6, we talked about our approach for vehicle emissions, recognizing that the regional council can't do a lot in the regulatory space around vehicle emissions. So it was very much a non-regulatory approach. And focus area 7 in the strategy was around our monitoring and research that we do and we've been doing for a long time, and revising or revisiting the approach, our approach to that as well. So that was what the draft strategy was starting to look like, which would be familiar to some of you, but brand new to others. And why did the strategy start to take the shape that it did? And that's because we had a series of workshops and meetings with our council, and we were provided some direction about the ambition and the approach that the regional council should take under this revision of our approach. So one of the, in terms of the ambition set by the council is that we should try and meet those national environmental standards. Those national environmental standards have been around for a long time. We're not meeting them in some areas, and the council agreed that we should try and meet those. There are also World Health Organization guidelines in existence, which are actually a lot more stringent than the national standards that have been adopted in New Zealand. So we've got the standards which have been adopted and enforced by central government, and then we've got these World Health Organization guidelines which have not been adopted formally in New Zealand, but you will hear the WHO guidelines talked about because
so the WHO guidelines address PM 2.5, which is the smaller particle size, and so on occasion you will see Stats NZ and MFE reporting on whether or not they're hitting the WHO guidelines. So while we aren't trying to meet them, don't be surprised if you see national reporting that does put it in that sort of a context, because that is the guideline that they are using for that.
So you'll hear people talk about WHO, but it's not officially adopted by New Zealand, and it was determined that that wouldn't be the ambition for our strategy. The council at the time as well gave quite clear direction that we would not be banning wood burners anywhere in the region, but that a gradual phase out of some of the older, higher emitting wood burners in our priority towns was supported as an approach that we should take. Then the council advised that phase out should be led by non-regulatory measures. so it's not a matter of just banning older wood burners overnight either. Again, we don't want a situation where people feel like they can't use the wood burner that's in their house all of a sudden and then suffer other ill effects from being cold. So it was going to be a gradual phase out with led by non-regulatory measures. And the council said that we should investigate options for financial support for helping with that phase out of the older wood burners. And for some of the other discharges, those other focus areas of the strategy, we worked with the council and identified a series of or a suite or a mix of regulatory and non-regulatory approaches as well for some of those other sources of discharges. But again, the thrust of the strategy really was around domestic heating in those priority towns, so the top 6 that we mentioned on the previous slide. And so we'll just go into a little bit of a deeper dive on what that looked like. So the approach to domestic discharges to air from domestic heating in the priority towns. We developed a toolbox essentially, and this was based on what's worked elsewhere. So other regions have had a lot of success in this space, but we know it wasn't simply a case of cut and paste that to Otago because we've got unique challenges in Otago. So we had look at what worked elsewhere and took the best bits or figure out what would work in Otago. For any of these other regional councils, we worked a lot with other regional councils around the country, and some people have been doing this for a couple of decades at other regional councils. And what we heard from all of them is that a couple of key ingredients are education, funding, time, and some rules. So we do need some clear rules about what our expectations are in terms of the sorts of emissions from wood burners that are going to be acceptable moving forward. But we need to give people time, and people need to be aware and understand, and the funding is what really helped to make this happen in other regions. So we basically drafted up a phased approach, and it again, the focus was on older wood burners in those priority towns. It wasn't every wood burner everywhere. It was there was the older, higher emitting wood burners in those top 6 towns. And the phased approach saw us leading with non-regulatory measures for a good 5 years. So working with those communities for 5 years to help people to understand what the issue is, why we need to see some change, and what support is available to enable them to make those changes. After 5 years, there would be some rules kicking in around, okay, look, it's been 5 years now, that wood burner needs to have been gone by now. And the idea is that we were going to do so well with the non-regulatory approaches for the first 5 years that by the time the 5 years was up, there would be none of the non-compliant wood burners left anyway. That was the plan. And so there was going to be a bit of a cyclical approach. So every 5 years, the next phase of wood burners would be phased out. But we were very clear that we did not want anyone having to replace a wood burner that was less than 20 years old. So the manufacturers and suppliers, they guarantee about 10 to 15 years in terms of your wood burner and its parts. But, I've lived in a house in Cromwell with a very old wood burner, worked very well, so it doesn't mean that it's not going to work after 15 years. But we thought because of the investment that people make in these wood burners, the manufacturers and some of our experts were saying, 15 years is reasonable. We said 20, let's start with, if someone's bought a wood burner, we want them to get at least 20 years worth of use out of it. In terms of the rental properties, we investigated because of the, what's the standards, the rentals called?
They're under the Home Tenancies,
Yeah.
Residential Tenancies Act. There are
Standards around what?
healthy home standards.
Healthy home standards. Thank you.
Got there.
Should have written that down before. The healthy home standards, and we worked with the government agency that administers that to understand as a landlord, what's the expectations around the heating source in the home. And interestingly, that if the wood burner is non-compliant, then it doesn't meet the healthy home standards. So, we talked about, well, how do we work with landlords to help them to understand that and to help them as well, if there's anyone else out there, to transition to a cleaner source of heating if that wood burner is non-compliant. And, you know, because we did not want a situation where, again, a tenant is in a home with a wood burner, that's their only source of heating, and they're told they can't use it anymore. We didn't want to end up in that situation, so we were trying to unpack all the complexities of that. So that was our toolbox for domestic heating. That's what is in the, or was in the draft strategy. We thought that a combination of all of these things over that 5 years phased approach was gonna do the job and get us to where we needed to go. As you would know, one of those tools has been put on hold for a while, which is the update to the rules because of the plan stop regulations. And so we've had to just take a bit of a pause with the air quality strategy and rethink about what's the best approach now that one of those tools is not available to us right now. And we'll come back to you imminently with an alternative approach. So what are that? So, yeah.
How would you know I've got a wood burner? And that it's old or that it isn't old?
So
Powers of entry into my home?
yeah, so we've been looking at some of in those priority towns, so the top 6, and we've been looking at what kind of records do we have of what age the wood burner would be. So for Alexandra, for example, we know when a wood burner has been installed because if it's been installed legally, there should be a building consent. And so working with we already get information from the TAs every month or so.
Yeah.
About building consents that have been issued. So for a town like Alexandra, we're already starting to map what building consents were issued for which houses, and what the date of that was. So if there has not been a building consent issued in the last 20 years for a wood burner installation, but it probably has a chimney, then you have to ask, well, if it's got a chimney and there's no record of a wood burner being installed in the last 20 years, then either the wood burner is older than 20 years, or it's been decommissioned and the chimney just hasn't been removed, or it's been installed illegally in the last 20 years, or there is always the ones that fall through the cracks. So there might have been someone who had a wood burner installed legally, but for whatever reason the record didn't come through. So we can start to build a database of where we know there's been a younger than 20-year-old wood burner installed. And then we did this in Arrowtown a few years ago, where we went out and actually asked people, you know, for those ones where we saw a chimney, but we didn't have any record of a wood burner being installed in the last 20 years. We actually went out, you know, through letters and asked them, would you mind popping online, filling in the survey and telling us what your situation is? And we got a really good response rate from that. There was about at least 50% response rate. People came back and said, you know, this is my situation, I've had it decommissioned, or I don't use it, or it's older, or yeah. So we were starting to build a picture about what's where. There was always going to be gaps, but so we can't come to people's home and ask to look up, to come in and inspect the wood burner unless we suspect there's an issue with the pollution coming out of that chimney specifically.
Did we tell them when we asked them what the effect of them giving themselves up to us was, or might be?
When we did the work in Arrowtown, I would have to get Sarah to speak to that because it was her project, but it definitely was not pitched as a compliance project. It was an information gathering exercise. So the next steps is that you're going to hear from probably Anita in December around some further options around what we can do in the airspace. And we are currently planning to come back to you around about February with a revised draft air quality strategy. And if that is endorsed by the council, then we'll seek public feedback on it in April.
Anita, that December, really, because of the halt on the air plan, the regulatory document, we're effectively just retesting which direction council wants us to take. Is that, it's effectively the purpose of that December update,
Yep.
is given the changes to the framework.
Yes, and it will have a somewhat controversially, a regulatory option and a do nothing option and a non-regulatory option.
So we need to check back in because of the we can, when I say there's a plan, there is a pathway to continue doing a plan, so we need to put that in front of council for you to consider. You can apply to the minister to be able to carry out some of that planning work. But the original plan we had, which for the year, the original program we had for year with the plan and the strategy, obviously the nature of or where we are at, given recent legislation has changed significantly. So we need to come back and test where the council table wants us to go in the space. And the youth strategy is still an option in the non-regulatory space. The air plan could be an option. My suspicion is that we wouldn't be successful if we requested it, but the pathway's there. So that will need some more guidance, and that will then inform whether or not that February date is achievable to then come back and move on with this.
Can we know from Anita or you, Richard, when you say somewhat controversially, Anita, that will include a regulatory option, does that mean we are butting up against the government and saying we want to put in something that isn't currently part of their thinking, or?
It's not butting up against the government. They've left the pathway there. I think we just have to be, we just have to think about whether or not it is a pathway, whether or not you would want to approach the government to request that. Given that we will also know by then what the new resource management legislation is likely to look like and what the requirements of that will be, but it wouldn't be right for staff to put up options to you that didn't include that, because it is an option you have.
And it is just the option of using the pathway that Rich described has been left open. That's all the regulatory option is.
Do we know where the government's at with an updated NESAQ?
Not to my knowledge. I suspect it's caught up with the other RM reform.
Just for context, there is one person at MFE working on the NESAC. So it is reasonably low in the priority at this point in time.
That's the end of the presentation.
It's been spot on time-wise. Any other questions on there generally? Right, next time.
So we are safe.
Oh,
Jimmy, you do.
yeah.
What can we get there?
Do soup examples.
Send them a survey.
Another resource that might be out there, you may not.
Well, tell Sarah you were keen to see her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
So we're moving on to regional deals.
Yes,
Got that right? In the right order?
I was going to say no, but that's right.
And with a view to another 45 minutes if we need it, and then at 12:30, just breaking for lunch, and then we've got one more to do after the break. So over to you, Anita.
And I don't know that we'll take 45 minutes. What I would say in lieu of the number of slides Nick gave you yesterday is don't take the small number of slides to belay anything other than we're able to condense this quite small. And so we're just going to take you through where we're at in terms of regional deals. This is everything that's in the public arena. And Mariana joined us at a staff level and acting as a secretariat a couple of months ago, and has been invaluable. So we'll just work our way through the slides. If you have any questions, just sing out. So I'm sure you're reasonably familiar with the objective of the regional deal. So it's about economic development and growth removing some of the barriers that exist in terms of legislation, and then supporting investment in infrastructure in exchange for something from the local government partners, with the aspiration that we get better value for ratepayers and taxpayers, and for our regional deal that we get a better environment and a better economy as a result as well. So Queenstown Lakes District Council had done a power of work on putting together a regional deal proposal. Early indications from government was that it was going to be a select number of councils that were going to be asked to apply, and they were one of them. There was a pivot later in 2024, and it was open to everybody, and it was required to be a bit more regional than just one TA. And so Queenstown Lakes reached out to both Central Otago District Council and ORC to see if there was any interest in submitting a joint proposal. So we did piggyback on the back of the mountain of work that QLDC had done over a number of years outside of the regional deal, but specifically to prepare for an application. And a joint letter from the three councils registered our preliminary interest on the 18th of December. The next stage was a light touch proposal.
So just really quickly, just because there was a comment from Councillor Radish for those of you at that session the other day around a coastal deal. So at the time the expression of interest were lodged with the government, there was an expression of interest from the coastal councils, and ORC supported that. It was very, very light touch, and even that's probably been a little bit generous. So I guess just putting out there, when Jules was talking about that the other day, there was a conversation at the time, but there wasn't the amount of work that had already been done by QLDC available on the coast to actually pull something meaningful together. But I think this government is obviously committed to this as a process. The opposition have said that they believe there is merit in the regional deal process and would look to continue it. So I suspect those the comments from Jules are something that the coastal councils may want to revisit in the future once this first tranche of deals move through the system, in terms of being able to pitch something up to central government. So that's there was something lodged, it just didn't really have any meat on the bones in terms of what was being asked for. So probably wasn't surprising that at that stage of the process, it wasn't one of the ones chosen to move forward. Right.
Good. So yeah, the next requirement was for a light touch proposal to be submitted by the end of February. So all three councils individually supported the proposal that was put together. One of the key criteria in terms of that proposal was there had to be existing plans or strategies that supported the components that were in it. So that required all three of the councils to pull that stuff together. In terms of ORC, one of the aspects of the package was transport, and so we were able to rely on the Queenstown Public Transport Business Case of 2023 to support that part of it. So that was an example of the sorts of work that you needed to have done to enable those component parts to be put together. So yeah, all the councils agreed, and we submitted that by the due date, which was great. We then worked to establish what a governance arrangement would look like should we be selected. We didn't know in the early stages whether or not our proposal would get across the line, but what we were hearing from the DIA is we needed to be ready to go should we be successful. So we worked on a structure. The structure just oversees the negotiation. It's not any governance structure. If we get beyond a negotiation period, so it is just for that initial period. And all three councils endorsed the establishment of the joint committee, which you've just got the resolutions there. So both mayors and the chair were represented, and then an additional member from each council, and then a memorandum of agreement, which appoints the joint committee that has a range of delegations in terms of operation and how we approach. So any questions on that? The Joint Committee meets reasonably regularly. We also intersperse those meetings with workshops. All councillors of all three councils are invited to those meetings to sit as observers in addition to the committee, so that you've got some visibility. There is a degree of confidentiality required and an expectation from central government, but we do circulate the papers and include those invitations to the wider group of councillors.
For the new councillors, the discussion topics or the topics that will be on the table have been put forward by the TLAs, and really ORC would sit as the sort of overarching supporter of those. We aren't bringing our own topics into those discussions, are we?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're bringing transport. Transport is an ORC-led proposal, and we're doing, you know, lots of the thinking in that space, but the others do have more of a regional aspect to them in terms of, you know, our general obligations under the Local Government Act for Wellbeing. So they are more TA-led, but transport is, and certainly the public transport aspect is entirely in our wheelhouse.
Right. So then our school bus issue is that ones like that are appearing in those specific areas, do they become possibilities within that negotiation?
That hasn't come up at all in the scope of regional deals, and I don't think would meet the government criteria in terms of unlocking economic development and, you know, housing and those sorts of things.
I think one of the first questions they look at is there another process or mechanism in government to resolve the issue that you are trying to solve or unlock the development? And if the answer is yes, they will push towards that, rather than use the regional deal as a replacement for an existing process. So MOE Bus is a good example where there's a decision to be made by MOE, and you know, that doesn't need a regional deal lens, that just needs a conversation about what the best decision is for the community. So it's that lens around, do we need to implement something new, is a test that the DIA staff are looking at when there's conversations.
Right. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
I think I've talked through some of the slide, but the Joint Committee engaged Connor English as our independent negotiator, obviously well placed in terms of physically located in Wellington, so close to the Beehive, but also lots of connections through his various governance and operational roles. So he's got lots of connections and is helpfully able to pop out and meet with people as and when required. So Connor's been working alongside the Joint Committee and also engaging with us at a staff level as well to really understand what it is that we're trying to achieve. And the Crown similarly appointed Malcolm Alexander as their negotiator. So each of the three regional deals, there's one in Auckland, one in Tauranga, and the Otago Central Lakes, have got their own Crown negotiator, so one each. And we've got Mr. Alexander, who also is well versed in the local government sector and has those connections into government. Then, as I said, we meet regularly. We have workshops, no decisions are made in the workshops, and then we have meetings to provide direction. The scope of the Joint Committee is what is within the Light Touch proposal. So that is the delegation that they have, and anything that might go outside of what's in the Light Touch and or any final packages have to go back to each of the three partner councils to be agreed. So the scope is reasonably well confined.
Sorry, I may have missed this. Just checking. So your third line up there, Mr. English is working alongside the Joint Committee and the staff working group. And the earlier slide, maybe I missed it. Who's on the staff working group?
Didn't miss it, didn't tell you, didn't even think about it. So no, not you at all. So from ORC, it's myself, Amanda has, and Richard pop in from time to time, and Mariana as the secretariat. And then from Central Otago District Council, Dylan Rushbrook, who's one of their GMs who's been seconded full-time to work on regional deals. And then from Queenstown Lakes District Council, Michelle Morse, who is one of their GMs, Penny Pierce, who is their strategy manager, Anita Vanstone, who is their strategic growth manager, and yeah, since another manager, are the key people on the staff working group, and then we just pull in expertise from time to time as
And
well.
so all three CEs sit
Yeah.
across the committees and the workshops, don't attend all of the meetings, it's the general managers take the lead in a lot of those, but we're there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Apologies, I didn't
No, that's
even think about staff. So the composition of the joint committee, as I said at the start, in place for the duration of negotiations only, and then further discussions about governance going forward if we get to that stage. The scope is in accordance with the light touch proposal. There's been an agreement on joint priorities, determine when direction is needed from councils, and then councils retain responsibility to agree and ratify any final view.
It's really important to know it was quite clear at the time, because we're aware at the time that the memorandum of agreement was signed that there had been limited opportunities for involvement in the process to that point. And so there was different, I guess, levels of comfort for, and that wasn't just an ORC thing, that was across all councils were signing themselves up for. And so it's very clear that the negotiations are to occur in line with the light touch proposal and those priorities that are included in that proposal, and that any final deal still needs to come back for ratification. So those things were both very clear at that point in time, noting that there had been, there was very different opinions about the appropriateness of the involvement of council at that point, because we were running to the central government timeline.
That's just a slide, excuse me, on the priority outcomes, and it is around growth and economic development, better infrastructure, more affordable infrastructure, and housing. So there's a number of objectives, and each of our 5 packages or focus areas touches on a number of those individually. So 5 packages within the deal, and I'll just talk you briefly through all of those. Those are not listed in any order, but transforming transport. And so this is one we have taken a lead, but what I will say is it's not just public transport. There are aspects there in terms of resilience. So obviously noting that Queenstown in particular has some roading networks that could be isolated and create some challenges, especially and should there be a natural disaster. And so there's things like better resilience, connectivity, some older bridges and things like that involved in transport. But one of the key components that we're involved in is offline MRT, so a mass rapid transit system. There's been a raft of business cases undertaken in the Queenstown area over the last few years, and all of them collectively say we can't get our way out of the system by road, so we need something that isn't a road-based system. Obviously, Queenstown is geographically constrained. We can't just make the roads wider there like we can in other parts of the country, and so we do need to go offline. Excuse me, just completely lost my train of thought. And the challenge we have with when that offline MRT comes on board is that all of the projections that it was based on are coming quicker. So the population is growing faster, continuing to grow year on year. And so the need for that is coming much sooner than we had anticipated. The other key part of the public transport network is connecting Central Otago and over the hill in Wanaka up to that network. So a lot of our business people that work in Queenstown don't live in Queenstown. We need to make sure they can get through. We need to make sure our freight can move. I'm sure Matt can speak to it far better than I, but getting around Arrowtown and Queenstown sort of between 8 and 9 in the morning and 3 and 5 in the afternoon has its challenges. So that holds everybody up and it slows the economy down and it impacts productivity. So we want to make sure that we can do better in that space. So part of the package is having some bespoke settings. At the moment, for example, the government policy statement on transport doesn't mention mass rapid transit. So it's not enabled in that policy statement. So some of the things that we're talking to the government about is how we do that, how we get that conversation started. And then alternative funding and finance options in there. And for MRT, there are a number of private enterprises who are interested in supporting or delivering MRT. So and a unique opportunity to, bless you, to potentially deliver that in terms of how we, how we might bring, a really significant capital investment to the market. Package 2 is capturing value. So this is around things like making sure growth pays for growth. A local visitor levy. You may be aware that Queenstown Lakes has been lobbying for quite some time for a visitor levy. There was some draft legislation prepared around about February 2020, and then March 2020 happened. And we all know what happened in March 2020, and it went on hold and it hasn't quite come back around. The Queenstown Lakes have done some work, and CDC have now done similar work around sensitivity, and there's not a significant impact in terms of demand for bed nights if they introduce a visitor levy. So in other words, the consumers are willing to pay a bit more to stay in those two areas. There's lots of work around affordable housing, so not necessarily lots more houses, although that's needed as well, but affordable houses. So lots of our challenges we have in Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago is some of the people that do things like drive our buses and our nurses in our hospitals can't afford to live there. So as well as more houses, we need affordable housing. And that's a really strong push for Queenstown Lakes. They have the Queenstown Community Housing Trust, which is having some success, and they've got a model where they will own land in perpetuity, and the houses on that land will always be affordable housing, so it can't be sold off to make a profit to then continue. So there's covenants across it that says it must always be sold and kept affordable. So they've part of the package is trying to unlock opportunities to do more of that. And then also mining royalties is in there. And that's about if it's going to happen, how do we make sure we get some share of the benefit of it coming back, not endorsing or otherwise, but just if it's happening, how do we make sure that some of that pays for roading upgrades, of the trucks going over roads and, additional bridges, infrastructure and things like that. So that's package 2. Package 3 is electrify Otago Central Lakes. Queenstown in particular is reasonably constrained in terms of electricity, and the way that population is growing and the demand on electricity is it's going to run out of capacity. Things like MRT and just housing growth do put pressure on that network. So this is about making the electricity network more resilient, providing capacity, but also delaying the impact of any upgrades to the grid by taking people off the system. So part of this is a ratepayer assistance scheme for rooftop solar and batteries, with a view that that will delay the investment that's needed to upgrade power lines. Package 4, so private investment, public health. There's been a group of Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes elected officials working for some time in this space. And what everyone agrees is that there needs to be more public health services available in the area. There is there's no decision at all about where it should be, but we all agree that we need it. The first thing that we need to do is understand exactly what it is that the region needs. And this is one of the key parts of this is this would be in addition to the new Dunedin Hospital, not instead of or at the expense of. So the view is that we need both aspects of that health system to enable what's going on. Lots of the health needs generated in the Central Otago area come from visitors. Ski fields provide a steady stream of visitors to the public health systems, and they don't necessarily pay their share of the cost of those. So as I understand it, the cost goes into a pool that's just distributed around the country as opposed to proportionally distributed in terms of where the impacts lie. So there's some things around making that more equitable, and also like transport, this one has some private investors who are prepared to work alongside this process and deliver models.
In the health space, has any thought been given in so far as the, as you say, the ski field produced more? That's ACC, which of course is we provide ACC money for everybody who finds their way to New Zealand. But what isn't being paid is the stuff that goes into the ACC scheme from usually workers and other things there. So has any thought been given to, as it were, an ACC levy or a dedicated, if you're thinking of a visitor levy, a levy for the amount that you would usually have paid into the scheme by locals, either through taxpayers' money or however, because those are all funded, aren't they?
Yes, that's not part of this package, no. Not as far as I'm aware, and it has not been discussed.
Yeah, well, if we're thinking of health, that might be a major part of what's costing more health in Queenstown.
Potentially, it's certainly not, as I say, not being discussed at this stage, but it may fall within the light touch proposal.
You talk about ratepayer assistance for solar installation. Is that just in Queenstown or Otago?
It would apply in the Otago Central Lakes deal region.
So there'll be a targeted rate to raise there.
I don't know exactly how it works, and the scheme itself is not quite off the ground and running, but
So the LGNZ, Local Government New Zealand, had done some work on was led largely at Auckland and Toad on a ratepayer assistance scheme. It's essentially come about because of the inability of properties to pay rates. So capital rich, cash poor, or asset rich, sorry, cash poor. So the idea being that they can take a loan out to cover rates, and then that's collected at the time the property sells. What other councils are now looking at, well, could a similar scheme be used for other things? So while this is very much targeted at Otago Central Lakes and this particular package of investment, that proposal would be available nationally. Any council could look at it. So it's not a subsidy as such. It's actually a way to make funding available for specific things that the council would have to decide on. Okay. Yeah. So it's the term ratepayer assistance, I think, is being it's not a subsidy as such. So, but we can grab some more information on that LGNZ scheme and share that.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
So just to be sure, Otago Central Lakes is not the whole Otago region. It is CODC, QODC, ORC are there because we have to be.
Yeah.
And there's some
that's correct.
touches across it that we'll be involved in, but so for that scheme, it would be just QODC, CODC.
That's right. And the fifth package is visitors and investors. So this is around growing our highly productive sectors, recognising that in Otago in particular, the rural sector provides a significant portion of our GDP and supports our economy in a number of ways. Increasing the value of the visitor economy, positioning Otago Central Lake as New Zealand's investment and business shopfront, and that's some sort of tangible things like Tourism New Zealand having, a presence in the region, for example, and then looking at sustainable tourism. I think that's it. That's the end of the slides. There's a power of work that's gone on that sits all behind this, and you can send you the link to the full light touch proposals. They're all available. I'm not sure if the Regional Deals website is up and running yet, but there is a proposal. There is a work in progress to have one Regional Deals website that posts all of the information rather than having to bunny hop around all the three councils. May still be a work in progress, but that's the intention, is that there's one home for all of this information to sit on.
And for clarity, that would be all the information that's in the public domain and everything we are able to share after clarifying with DAA, because what we've agreed with them is that all of the papers, will run all of the papers by them before making a decision on what to release. You will see all of the papers today that relate to Monday's workshop, and those papers look backwards to the negotiation meetings we've held in the last month or so, and forwards to the next negotiation meeting, which happens to be next Friday. So yeah, apologies in advance that there are quite a lot of papers there. I've tried to signpost in the agenda which is from which, but you will receive all of those, and you can observe those who are not members of the committee can observe the workshop on Monday for further context. All the papers will also be in Diligent. There's a special folder for the regional deal papers in Diligent. So yeah, plenty of information out there, as you say, and plenty of work done.
Yeah, the other thing I'd add is it is slow progress, but much of that is because our deal is complex. So when we speak to the DIR staff, they talk about the complexity of ours compared to the other two, which are dealing with one organisation and a much more streamlined proposal. Ours has got a number of component parts, so it is slow, but we are continuing to meet and to talk. So the staff group meet twice weekly, and then there's joint committee workshops and then separate negotiation meetings. So we have quite a number of touch points with various people throughout the week.
Yeah. Thanks, Nita and Rona. It's a really good summary of what's happening. Can I just say to those that are new that to join on those workshops and see and listen to what's happening is really, really useful. And I liken the process to being there's a plane being built almost as we're still trying to fly it. It's I'd say torturous. The expected outcomes, I think, for the Target Central Lakes and then potential future deals, and like Jules was saying, for Dunedin City, might be the impetus and a new way of stimulating growth. So I'd encourage anyone to join those workshops and just get a feel for what's happening.
So I was just speaking to Di this morning and governance, so that if you haven't already got it, it'll be coming through today. Is that all of those invites need to go to all councillors. So that will be coming through if it hasn't already, and that will also get you access to the papers for Monday. Also talking to Hillary around the joint committee membership is one of those things that will need to be decided or endorsed at the November 26th meeting in terms of the ORC formal members on that joint committee. So I know that's something that's in the mix, that's being discussed at the moment as to who's going to fill those roles. But yeah, just echo Neil's thoughts. If you have a sort of broader interest in this process, then I think Monday's workshop will be a good one to call into, because that really will be it's the first meeting post-election where we've obviously got a returning mayor in Tamar who is familiar with the process, but both Hillary and John in Queenstown are new. So there needs to be just an element of retracing the steps and getting everyone back up to the same point to then carry the conversation forward. So it'll be a good chance to sort of just pick up on a lot of what has been done to date. Also agree with Neil around the process. It has been an incredibly frustrating process, but that's not a criticism of DIA or the government. It is challenging to stand up a brand new process, and one that is quite complex and one that spans multiple different government agencies in terms of the type of projects that are being put forward. But at the same time, there is a lot of investment being put into this process by all three councils, Queenstown in particular, but we are spending a significant amount of time now with both Mariana and Anita and others involved in the transport work stream. And at some point, there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what is the end game, and what will the region receive as a benefit from the effort that's being put in. So that's something that needs to be explored over the next few months, just to make sure that this a pathway does become clear for some of these packages of work.
And just Richard's mentioned the mayors, so the other member from Central Otago was Tracy Patterson, and then the other member from Queenstown Lakes was Deputy Mayor Quinton Smith. So they're the four, Chair Calvert is 5, and then as you said, we'll nominate the 6th on the 26th.
Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, I do. Matt, so I can go first. I need to say that the key thing about that is that only 2 of 6 are returning. Definite.
Yes.
And I think it's going to be, that's why Monday's meeting is really quite crucial. And I think for us to see what's happening, and then as we work through who from here is going to be there, we'll probably support those people as well. But it's pretty unusual. Wasn't probably, well, who knows what it expected, but yeah, 2 out of 6 that are charging. The good thing is that the staff are still there that are involved, and obviously they're the ones that do all the hard work. So
I was just curious about the time frame, and I know it's a bit of a crystal ball or a broken ball or whatever you're trying to look into, but yeah, in terms of how things are meant to progress, there's a central government election next year. If things are heading before then, is there going to be a no? Is there going to be a pure speculation? I know because it is a new process.
No, not at all. So the government is hoping to have the first deal signed off this side of Christmas. As a joint committee, we've said we probably don't want to be that one because ours is complex. But they are optimistic that deals 2 and 3 will follow in short order behind it. So we'd be looking to have all the deals, I think they'd be looking for all 3 deals to be signed up by the middle of the year ish.
Andrew?
Yeah, just your point before, Richard, about I suppose appreciating what's going to be beneficial to the region or to the
sub-region, sorry.
Whatever. Is it any clearer about what the government is expecting of the parties, i.e. ORC, Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago, in terms of investment? Because it seems to me that it's always been couched that there's got to be an investment from the government, but obviously an investment from the parties. But are we any clearer? Can we read the tea leaves, or is there going to essentially be a significant investment required by the local authorities to actually make this work? And I'm talking more than just the work that's happening now. I'm talking about dollars and cents, basically.
I think it's different for those different work packages. So one of the things that DOA ask consistently when you are talking about a piece of work is what is the contribution that if we just say councils, what is the contribution that the councils will make to that work? I think the councils are of the position that there is an awareness that for some of these, and let's just take mass rapid transport, if that does become a thing and is part of public transport, then we will have a role under the funding arrangements we currently have to contribute to the operation of that system. But for other things, the position is, well, take health. Would councils be stumping up for things that are normally paid for by central government?
So to go against the ethos of the current government, where stick to the basics.
That's it. And so there isn't a lot of clarity. Is probably where I'd get to. The question does come back across the table frequently. What is the contribution going to be? And I think councils have sort of said, well, we have our processes and systems in place to put these projects through. They'll have to go through annual and long-term plans and all of those sorts of things if there's a cost. But we can't do that until we get some clarity on, well, what is the project, what's it going to cost, and what's the central government contribution going to be, or is it going to be a visit levy or whatever it might be. So it's that whole, that's what's making the process so complex, I think, in my mind, is trying to get some clarity so that existing processes, particularly at a council level, can be worked through because we can't just sit there and sign up for something. That's effectively what the government are asking. It's really.
Breach the local government act. essentially.
Sorry, what? Yeah.
Gretchen, come on.
Yeah, Gretchen, sorry, Gretchen, I just wonder if you had any observations, given you have chaired the joint committee for, I know you're sick, so sorry to put you on the spot, but any observations from your time in the chair of that joint committee, just on the process?
Sorry, first of all, excuse me, sorry, I'm feeling a little bit rock, but yeah, that it's been a really positive process, although frustrating and feeling our way through it. I guess starting with the government has been quite clear that they want illustrated what the strategic priorities are for that sub-region as well. So that's a important starting point. It has to be clear that that we've had a good think about what sits within that strategy, and then also business cases as well. So to have all that planning behind things needs to be there first of all. So we have to work together on that, and the working together is really important. It might take some time, but it's really important work that we do that as regional council and territorial authorities, and that we start to understand each other as well at the local government crown level, remembering that we're trying to address some of the most difficult issues, I suppose, for that, together. And you wouldn't expect immediate progress on that. And also the fact that we were told at the very beginning that it wasn't about funding grants from the government. So there's not a simple monetary solution coming anytime soon either. So I guess it's, building those relationships and understanding from my perspective, that's been really important. And I think we will get there, but it'll take some time.
Thanks, Gretchen. Any final questions on that one? Well, the information will keep coming, the invitations will keep coming, and obviously we will appoint that membership at the end of this month, and then carry on with the process that it is. But yeah, there's a reasonably heavy workload involved, and a lot of information flying around. So just acknowledge the work that Anita and Mariana and the staff at the other council are doing as well, because it's there's a lot to keep up with. So it's pretty much perfect timing. We're going to have a break. Oh, Matt.
Will someone send out a calendar invite?
Yeah, that's as I said to Di. I spoke to Di this morning. That's coming, and that'll also be the papers. So any questions when you get those, either I'll probably just come and see me or Anita, and if we can't help you, Mariana definitely will be able to.
Right. It'll come direct from QLDC, just in case you're wondering why it's popping up. And it's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, fine, there you go.
You're free. Apologies, you can imagine that signing out the papers is another one of the challenges. They have to go past 3 lots of CEs and other people. So it does, today will be the day. It's not sure when.
So we will have a break till 1, and then we will be back with the final briefing for today. We'll just shut that down. Yep.